Bags. Hey gang, I'm Dr. Who. This is Accounting is a Joke, where accounting makes sense so you can make dollars. Today we're going to take a look at a walkthrough illustration of how to properly fill out a worksheet. So with that being said, let's get it. So we have the worksheet of best jobs, employment, services, files incomplete. Click on the icon to view the worksheet. So this is the same worksheet as here. Okay, then it says the following data are given to the employees. Let's see what we have here. So we have 4 transactions, adjusted entries. All right, and then it says requirements 1 and 2, calculate and enter the adjustment amounts directly into the adjustment columns using letters A through D. Calculate and enter the adjustment account balance and the adjusted trial balance. The account names and adjusted trial balance, blah, 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 worksheet, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. All right, gang. So, what you have here is an example of a partial worksheet. There are other columns that represent the financial statements, but in this particular problem, it stops at the adjusted trial balance. And so a worksheet is just a device that the accounting used to carry over all the accounts from the unadjusted trial balance with the proper adjustments to the new adjusted trial balance, and then fix the financial statements. So it's kind of like an Excel format, makes it easier for the accountant to walk through the accounting process at the end of the particular cycle. And so as you can see, we have the adjustment columns, which consist of both debits and credits. And then we have the adjusted trial balance, which we're going to find out in just a brief second how to transfer the adjustments to the adjustment trial balance. So it wants us to go ahead and fill this stuff out. And first things first, let's look at the adjustments. So we're going to adjust these particular adjustments first and then complete the adjusted trial balance. So gang, just for the adjustment section, you have to realize is that the only debits and credits that will be posted in the adjustment section will reflect the proper adjusted entries. And so as you can see, we have 4 of those adjustment entries that we need to take care of, okay? And so let's get to it. A tells us that service revenue accrued for $700. Okay, gang, easy. Service revenue accrued, we know that in this particular situation, the revenue has been earned, but the cash has not been received. So we have to create a receivable as well as record the revenue. So what we're going to do for A is we're going to debit accounts receivable for $700 and credit service revenue for the same amount. So what we're going to do is find A, and it's going to represent a debit to accounts receivable for the $700. And we're going to scroll all the way down to the service revenue, and we're going to go in the credit column, of course, A, for $700 as well. Easy breezy, gang. Moving on. Next, it tells us that office supplies used of $300. Keyword in here, gang, used. So this word used reflects the amount that we have to adjust by. Why? Because we know we adjust based on what has been used when we're dealing with office supplies. So here's the deal, gang. Anytime we adjust office supplies, we treat them like a prepaid, which means we're going to debit the expense and credit the asset. Since we're dealing with supplies, obviously we know what expense that is. Supplies expense. Moving on. Next, we have depreciation for the equipment of $1,300. Easy breezy, gang. Debit depreciation expense, credit accumulated depreciation for the equipment. So we're going to go to C under depreciation expense, and that would be debited for the $1,300. And we're going to find accumulated depreciation on the credit side for the $1,300. And last but not least, salaries owed to employees $1,400. Gang, keyword salaries owed. We know salaries is an expense to the company, but we know that it is now owed, which means it hasn't been paid. This is a proper example of an accrued expense. And by definition, we know accrued expenses are expenses that happen, but they haven't been paid. We know how to journalize that. We're going to record the expense by debiting salary expense for the $1,400. And we are going to credit, gang, salaries payable. And that's it, gang, in terms of our adjustment column section for the worksheet. Now all we have to do is sum up the debits total balance and the credits total balance. So if we were to add all 4 of these transactions, their amounts, Our total should be $3,700. Easy breezy. And so next we're going to transpose that information into our adjusted trial balance. So here's the deal, gang. So far, we've completed the unadjusted trial balance section of the worksheet. We just finished completing the adjustments. We're going to carry over by combining the two columns in order to create the adjusted trial balance. And so we already know if there wasn't an adjustment made for the account, it's going to keep the original unadjusted trial balance amount. For example, cash was not affected in the adjustments. We see that. So we're going to just transfer the $1,100 on the debit side. Easy breezy, gang. But what about accounts receivable? We see accounts receivable was affected. We originally had a balance of $4,100, but we made an adjustment by debit, and since accounts receivable is an asset, we know, gang, that a debit requires us to increase that account. So we're going to have to add the $700 to the $4,100, which will give us a new adjusted trial balance amount on the debit side, of course, of $4,800. Gang, it's just like going back to the old school T accounts. If one is on the debit side, one is on the credit side, we know we have to subtract those amounts. This is the same rule as applying for this worksheet. Let's take a look at office supplies. Office supplies did have an adjustment. We know office supplies is an asset. It started with an unadjusted balance of $1,200. However, we credited office supplies for $300 in the adjustment column. So we have a debit balance, but we made a credit adjustment. We know we have to subtract that, right? And just like our rules with the T accounts, whatever side has the highest amount of the total balance is going to retain the difference between the two when we subtract. So that gives us $900 when we subtract 300 from 12, but we know which side is going to retain, the debit balance. And just food for thought, gang, normally speaking, these remaining sides will always be the normal balance. And we know the normal balance by definition is the side in which the account increased on. So now that you have an idea how to properly transpose from the unadjusted through the adjustments to the adjusted trial balance, I'm just going to save us some time and fill out the remaining amounts. And as you can see, we have completed our adjusted trial balance, and our total summation for our debits and credit side does equal, which gives us a balance of $51,500. So what we're going to do now is check the answer. Bags all day. Moving on. So now it tells us to make the proper journal entry. So we're going to quickly fly through this. And then we remember that our service revenue was accrued, which means we're going to debit accounts receivable and credit service revenue. Check the answer. Bags all day. And B, we saw that our office supplies was used for $300. Therefore, we debited supplies expense and credited supplies. Check the answer. Fantastic. Next, we saw we had to depreciate some equipment. So we debited depreciation expense equipment, credited accumulated depreciation equipment. Check the answer. Well done, gang. And last but not least, we had to accrue some salaries for $1,400, so we debited salary expense and credit salaries payable. Check the answer. And last but not least, we had some accrued salaries of $1,400, so we debited salaries expense, credit salaries payable. Check the answer. Excellent. So there you have it, gang. A quick, easy illustration of how to properly complete the partial part of the worksheet using adjusted entries. So if that light bulb is clicking and it got you further to chasing the bags with that accounting information, please like, subscribe, and share the channel with your friends. Don't be stingy. As always, gang, I'm Dr. Who, and I love your time that you spend with me, and I hope to see you soon. Bags!